started off in New York City, my first job doing the Radio City Christmas show. And I was underage, so I had to get a work permit and all that good stuff. But then the assistant choreographer on that show assisted Chris Chapman, who did Guys and Dolls, and I ended up getting the national tour of that. And then I danced in Cats on the road. Then here, my Broadway debut here was How to Succeed in Business with Matthew Broderick. I was in Cats at the time, and I did a number for Broadway Cares Gypsy of the Year. They do to benefit Broadway Cares. They do the 2 benefits a year, and I did a number for our group, our Cats company. And the producers of the event saw it and asked me to do the opening number for the Easter Bonnet the following season. And once I did that, Rosie O'Donnell was sitting in the audience, and she had her talk show on at the time, which was like in its prime at that moment. And she asked me to do a number for the show based on that number. And Jerry Mitchell was choreographing it at the time, and he had to take a leave to do, I think it was the Full Monty or something. And so they needed someone, and she remembered me from it and just kind of hired me on the spot to come in to do the rest of the season. And then Jerry and I alternated for pretty much the rest of her run. And actually the first one I ever did it was on location at Disney. So I did one at Disney World for her, and then I did another one the following year at the Universal Studios. So it was like a big, huge kind of moving musical number, and not just in her studio. So it was exciting. And I knew once I got that, it led to different opportunities like Bat Boy, and just kind of having that cachet of her at the time was very helpful. And but Bat Boy was my first major show in the city. Martin Short's Fame Becomes Me, High Fidelity, The Ritz for Roundabout with Rosie Perez, Sunny in the Park with George, the revival that was at Studio 54, South Pacific, 13, and now Women on the Verge. Well, I met with Ira Weitzman here at Lincoln Center, who's one of the artistic producers here for musical theater. And I interviewed with him first, and he thought Bart and I might be a good mesh. And then I met with Bart, and we clicked, and South Pacific was our first thing. And then from that, we developed a really good relationship. We set the tour, and then he offered me Women. And out of the ladies across the board, I've only worked with Mary Beth Peil, I think, out of everyone. I was a big fan of everyone, and it was they were all supportive and incredible to work with. And I didn't get to dance with the principals that much, but they couldn't have been any more supportive with what we were doing. It was funny because this was in New York, this was my first quote unquote bigger dance show with actual dancers, and most of it has been musical staging, or the kids in 13, they were kids, and so it's always been very specific for the show. But this was the first like dance audition I've had, and I've known a few of them just socially, or I've done workshops with them and whatnot. But a lot of them were new, I hadn't even seen before, and it was absolutely thrilling to get to work with them. I mean, I feel like we have the best of the best right now. I mean, they're so fantastic, and they were extremely patient in the process, because there was a lot of dancing at one point, then there wasn't, then there was a middle ground, and they were completely supportive and flexible in terms of, okay, well now this one's completely cut, but now he wants a lot of dancing in this number. So we'd have to take vocabulary that we learned and see if it would work, and if not, then choreograph something more specific. And they were just truly, unbelievable group of performers to work with. Bart specifically, he creates in the room on his feet, so you have to just come in with every ounce of knowledge that you have studied and retained, and kind of just throw it up on the spot, and then what sticks, but then you go away and finesse. But about being adaptable, this is pretty much like it at its finest. But just in terms of other shows and things that I've worked on, it's I basically just research my butt off. It's you find out the form, and then like South Pacific, for example, he wanted it completely authentic. He said treat it like a play, not a musical. So I went and I studied like authentic 40s swing, not just like showy kind of swing, but like the actual, how did they move their feet? How did they didn't point anything. It was all loose, and so and just getting that in my body and putting that on the sailors and the women, and so it's really, to me, just as much research as I can possibly do. I worked with a flamenco performer here in the city. Her name is Rebecca Tomas, And I was actually working with her on something else at the time when I got the call for this. So it was really fortunate that I already had been studying, because it's very difficult. It's completely different than what we do in theater, 90% of the time. So it was foreign to all of us, and it was fun to learn. And then I also worked with Mark Stewart as well, who has his own company here, who does more of all of the ballroom type dances, just for hands and lifts and grips and things, just all that, just to make sure we were doing it properly. And I wanted to make sure we were doing everything the right way. But then with Bart's kind of input, he said, I don't want it to be so on the nose, though. I don't want it to be like, we're doing flamenco because we're in Spain. He said, like, mess it up a bit and make it not so on the nose. And so what we did was we took the flamenco and we took all of the different Latin forms of dance, and then threw some 60s in, because Pedro loves the 60s, and we just kind of pushed it all. I keep using the term, with the show, she puts the gazpacho in the blender, just to put all the dance forms into the blender, and then just see what evolves from that based on the music. I'm going to be directing a revival of Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, coming to Broadway, which is exciting. So I'll be doing both, wearing both hats on that one. I'm going to be working on Funny Girl with Bart, the revival of that. And then I just came from a reading, actually, of Little Miss Sunshine. So I'll be doing that. We're going to start off in La Jolla in January,